So, what is it that makes a difficult conversation so difficult to begin with? When you and I disagree and there's conflict between us, what is the energy that's feeding that psychologically? There's a drama that plays out between us when we're in conflict. It's referred to as the drama triangle, and it involves these three roles: the victim, the villain, and the hero. Every book you read, every movie you go see, your favorite TV series, they play around with the relationships between those three roles. I can't pay the rent, but you must pay the rent. I'll pay the rent. It's when you go to children's films or you go and read a fairy tale, it's so refreshing about who the poor little Bambi victim is, who's the nasty Ursula Sea Witch or Captain Hook who's trying to wreck everybody's day, and the prince or princess who are going to save it for everyone else. It's refreshing in a children's film or fairy tale. As adults, when we take a book on our vacation or when we're being pulled into a TV series on cable TV, they mix around those roles. They establish fairly early on, think of your favorite book, think of your favorite TV show. They establish fairly early on who are the people we're supposed to feel a little sorry for, who are the people who are the antagonists that we love to hate, the villains, and who's the protagonist, the person who's trying to make everything great. And then, within a few minutes, they start mixing them up. The hero starts doing something that you think, wait a minute, that's not really helpful, and they act like a villain. But then they eventually kind of make their way back up to that hero role. Or the victim actually did something aggressive and terrible, and then they kind of go back to being the victim. The villain flips a quarter or something to somebody who's asking for change on the street before they go and blow up a building. You see the roles doing these different things. We didn't expect them to. And the reason those things pull us in is it's much more like real life. Inside each one of us, at the end of the day, there's a part of us that just was trying to make it a better day, was trying to be a hero. Yeah, there were things there I probably could have done differently, and yeah, I knew people didn't want that, but it had to happen, so I was the villain. And then I just sort of feel like a victim, like maybe I should go open a candle shop instead of my actual job. That's a natural experience for all of us, and it reflects real life. When we're having the difficult conversation, when there's conflict between us, it starts to become much more like a Disney film, a children's story. I feel like the victim about that awful villain over there. Can somebody please help me? Where's my supervisor? Where's that person who's supposed to help me and be the hero? If I am called in as the hero, I'm just trying to make this better. It isn't long before I'm seen to be the aggressor and the villain on the same triangle. We get all mixed up about the stories that we tell ourselves inside our heads about why is he doing that? What is motivating her to say that? And those stories we tell ourselves, we're meaning-seeking creatures, become our explanation. Now I understand why she's doing that, because she didn't get enough love and attention when she was younger, and now she's taking it out on everybody else. Everybody becomes an armchair psychologist in conflict as we try and understand what's going on, when actually that information that we're telling ourselves inside our heads is not very useful, and it's frequently wrong. So one way to consider working with all of that is it's tempting to act like we know. It's much more productive and effective to act like we don't know. Stay curious. What midwife X could have done with nurse X, who was barking at her, calling her stupid and incompetent, might have been simply, how do you think you're coming across right now? That's an edgy question. It's a competitive question. It's also a strategic question to jar nurse X a little bit out of her approach that she's using. It helps her hear herself a little bit more clearly. There may be other questions that are available to her. In that situation, they're trying to get through a clinical event. In the follow-up discussion, she'll have opportunities to say, so what was your perspective on that? So clearly there are things I can be working on. What do you see yourself being able to work on? Midwife Y, in dealing with Dr. Y about the patient, she might, even in the moment, have an opportunity to demonstrate some curiosity, asking some questions like, I'm concerned about the patient. Is there another approach we can use? How would you suggest we do this differently? You can make strong points in a less strong way by phrasing them in that kind of tentative, questioning tone. But again, in the clinical event, usually the focus is to get through to the outcome as quickly as possible. In the follow-up discussion, midwife Y can ask Dr. Y about, okay, so clearly that interaction was difficult. What was your take on that? I'm concerned about how we physically are working with the women. What did you notice about that? And some of it is subtle. The doctor may not have noticed much. Oh, it was fine. It was fine. I would do a short acknowledgement and keep staying curious. Oh, okay, so from your perspective, it was totally fine. On my end, I was concerned about how the woman may have experienced that. And I wonder about other ways we could do that that would still meet the clinical aims, but show the woman that we're being respectful of her body.